Okay, as we've talked about, a lot of pollution prevention on a golf course starts around the shop. And our work has identified the equipment wash pads as a significant source of nutrient pollution, somewhat because of where they're placed, other reasons because of the amount of water we use and the clipping and material that come off the equipment when we have to wash it before we put it back out into use. So working with the Pollution Prevention Institute and the New York Golf Course Foundation, we've done a lot of work in identifying and helping superintendents get their arms around how to tackle this particular water quality problem. And honestly, it begins with first understanding how big of a wash system you need, right? And that begins with knowing how much water you use. So when we've started messing around with water use and cleaning equipment, we realized that before the equipment gets to a wash pad, if we blow it off, we use half as much water to clean it. So boom, now I need a smaller system because I cleaned equipment somewhere else. Second, when I'm washing the equipment, instead of cutting the hose off and not having a nozzle and just using your thumb and the amount of water just flowing out like crazy, get a nozzle that you can adjust and try to get just enough pressure for you to get the thing clean without overusing the water. So first, you work to reduce the amount of water you need so that when you're dealing with a wash system, you're not having to deal with so much water, right? So next, when you're going to build a system, or not even build a system, knowing how much water you're going to use is the place to start. The next is getting the clippings out of the water before the water leaves the site. From there, it's a matter of purifying the water even further with a system that we'll talk about in a minute, or even just letting the water run out over a large expanse of grass before it gets into any other surface water, okay? But here at the Blue Course at Bethpage, we've invested in putting in a system that's a recycled system so that the amount of water you use without adding much water, you can keep using. This is what we would call a DIY system. So Andy, let's talk about what we did. You obviously started with pouring a pad.
Correct. So, the first step was, like you said, having a flow meter just to see what the daily use is. So the daily use determines the size of the tanks. From there, we worked with the Pollution Prevention Institute in Gene Park out of there. So he did a lot of the specifications and had some of the sizing. We're kind of also going off the Locust Hill. The
Locust Hill project up in Rochester,
right.
That's right. That was the 1.0, this is the 2.0.
Correct, so we were picking their brains quite a bit about what would they do differently. Mm-hmm. They had one thing that helped over here was just simply the gravity from one tank to the other. They had a transfer tank, we got rid of that part of it. So you can wash off the equipment. We have grass screens up front.
So what's in these holes here?
That was just for a railing system that we never even used, to be honest. So that was, something we didn't
need.
So
you wash off and the clippings come in here, they're completely contained, and then as you can see, you've installed the screen.
Correct, it's a series of filters. So we have like a screen, so another area we can clean out, and then we have another area, another
More
screen.
screens. Again, all of these are designed to remove the solids.
Right.
Because one of the expensive parts of a normal system, or even the system they built at Locust Hill, was the HydroClean system, this metal structure that forces the water out and the clippings drop down into a wheelbarrow and then they move them away there. You eliminated that expense by just doing multiple cleans here.
Correct, right. Then we have a sump pump that pumps the water into the sand filtration.
So it comes into this tank and then pumped up into this, and in here is sand.
Correct.
Where did you get the sand?
Well, the sand, we also do specifications on that. Now, the 2 mil sand we use for the bunkers actually worked out.
Okay.
So with working with pollution P2I, they said that sand was good. There's also a gravel layer at the very bottom of it, so we want the water to come through.
So the water gets pumped in on top, and then there is either a spinning thing or an irrigating thing. It spritz it out. It doesn't just hose it in, it aerates it a little bit.
So we also have a very, now one of the other things about being at a state park, we have our own carpenter.
Right.
Our own carpenter even changed the spacing and the diameter of the holes in there so the water wouldn't just all dump out in the first spot. So there is, it's about a 6-foot diameter tank. The pipe goes all the way to the other side, so the water it's not going to just, like you said, plop in one
place. It's spread out over the whole thing.
Correct.
And you'll see this in any wastewater treatment facility. They're dispersing the water over the filter. So now it sits in the sand, makes its way through, comes out, and then gravity fed into the tank that then becomes what you wash with.
Correct, yeah. So right now, we just turned the irrigation system on, so we're not live yet, but we would have a little pressure washer hose or a little pump to basically have a hose that we can use out here.
Yeah, and reuse this water.
Right, and we also, when you mentioned blowing things off with air, we added a compressor, so now by the barn over there, we have an air hose so we can blow, we made it a little more convenient for the guys so they can blow off equipment over there first and then bring it over here.
Perfect. How many gallons did you wind up having to use?
This is actually a little oversized. I mean, I think this is a little over 1,000 gallons, and this is about 800 gallons.
And that was enough for you to wash all the equipment in a day?
Correct, yes. And then we also figured out, I have the figures written down, but say, are there times that we have to, if we get a particularly dry stretch, we have to add water to it? More often, it's when we get heavy rains, we're actually letting water loose. Yeah. Like an inch of rain was adding like 300 gallons, just from this pad itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why sometimes building a roof over these things is a good idea, to exclude the rainfall from it, so you don't have to do that.
A little bit of both. Sometimes you like the rainwater because it's free.
Because you don't have to add it.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So it isn't. That brings up the point, because this is a DIY system, and many people buy the turnkey systems, right? The wash systems that are just off the shelf. You pour a pad and put it in. But either way, you've got to do some maintenance. How's the maintenance been of the DIY when you were actually using it?
Well, yeah, I mean, like everything, there are struggles and pitfalls in trying to get it to work right. Sometimes are the screens lasting? Is it getting clined out as much as it should be? Mm-hmm. Is there anything going on with a leak, or can the sump pumps handle it? Like, we upgraded the sump pump because it just wasn't lasting long enough. We went to an all stainless steel pump because it is sitting in water quite often. It's almost like a little sump pump in your house.
So things wear out.
Like that. Right.
Okay, so that kind of figuring out the infrastructure, but once it's running, keeping it clean, it's not a lot of maintenance other than monitoring the water.
Correct,
right?
Yeah. I mean, the most important thing is, well, like running a golf course, what's the most important thing is the attentiveness of the staff.
Yeah. So attention to it.
Yeah.
Some of the turnkey systems require a little more care, right? You got to put microbes in or change filters.
And it's a big upfront expense that I think a lot of courses that haven't adopted it is really because it's a big line item for something that
most people don't even see as a problem.
Correct.
That is one of the biggest issues we have with a lot of best management practices, particularly around the shop. Investing around the shop looks very far from the golf course for many people. How is that improving the golf course?
It's not a new bunker. It's not a new tee.
That's correct.
It's,
Yeah, but again, as we said, a major source of pollution around golf course shops where we wash this equipment, and this is one example of best management practices that we would call the elite level, where you're actually recycling the water and reusing it. And one of the things we learned from doing this is that you don't have to crystal clean the water, because you're just going to reuse it to wash it. It doesn't have to be drinkable. It just has to be water that you can use again to clean the equipment and not disrupt any of the other parts out here.
Yep.
Okay.